Hello, I'm not Dr. Alan Campbell, but this is Tea and Biscuits and Murder. We're listening to a podcast with policeman Steve Hodel, and let's hope he finishes it off this time. I'm as sick of it as you are. Don't blame me for this being so dashed long. Blame Steve Hodel for lying so much. Shall we share the screen? Yes, we shall. Let's pick up where we left off last time, shall we? All right, we shall.
Identified. So basically, fast forward, Dad split, he's left the country. Now you also have to kind of understand the history of Los Angeles at that very time. At the very time this is all going on, the tape recordings.
Wire. They're wire recordings. That little fact really baffles Steve. He's not good with details. He just isn't.
William H. Parker, Chief Parker, who becomes our greatest police chief, is about to become the next chief. He's literally weeks away from being appointed. And his desire is to get rid of the corruption, get rid of the bad cops, turn the department around.
All right. Now, Steve, dear, I think I went into the LAPD history a bit already. Let me recap it very quickly again. Prior to William Parker taking over as police chief, there was a former Marine general, William Wharton, who ran an internal affairs investigation. He found, quote, a few bad apples, but generally it was a pretty good department. So no, it wasn't seething with corruption when Parker took over. That is not at all what happened. And I have a little bit more to say. Well, I have a lot more to say, but I'll let Steve tell a bit of the story here.
Take power and clean up LAPD. So he obviously,
which didn't need to be cleaned up, but do go on, Detective Hodel.
I think what happened was he and then Chief of Detectives Thad Brown was vying for him.
Yeah, William Parker and Thad Brown are public enemies number 1 and 2 in the Evil Daddy cover-up as portrayed in Shake That Moneymaker. What's interesting is that Steve will quote Parker and Thad Brown from Beyond the Grave. Oh, it's solved. So you have to wonder, just sort of, this is the kind of reasoning that you only get in Steve world. Okay.
So we're up.
Oh dear. Steve Hodel hotline. Oh dear. Butthurt hotline.
For the same job. Thad Brown wanted the chief, and it was between the two of them. And it came down to...
There were a number of men in the LAPD who were competing for the chief's job. The two top finalists were William Parker and Thad Brown. Yes, Parker ended up being chief. Thad Brown became acting chief when William H. Parker keeled over dead, and that's how that worked.
The city, the police commissioners vote. 5 commissioners, they each had 2 votes. And then this occurred, and I think basically this was the decision that, okay, you know what, let's do this. We need to clean up the department. Chief Brown, these are your guys and stuff, and let's seal this off. Let's put...
Whoa. Wait a minute. Now, in case you weren't paying attention, or in case you had fallen asleep when Steve was talking, he said they were district attorney's investigators. If you went back and listened to that, which we are not going to do, he said the guys who had the George Hodel under surveillance were from the district attorney's office. Suddenly, they're with the LAPD, a different agency. And it's like, God, nobody catches Steve on this minor, this little stuff that he just can't get right. It's like, okay. This, by the way, is not at all what happened. What Steve is going to tell you is this didn't happen this way.
Put it away for now. We'll come back to it. Let's take power and clean up the department.
Which didn't need to be cleaned up.
And but if this comes out now, we won't be able to quit power. The city, will be open to lawsuits on all of these different crimes. Hodel.
What's he talking about here? Lawsuits. What? People are going to sue the LAPD, over not solving homicides? What the fuck is Steve talking about? This is, he really depends on his listeners, his readers' ignorance to not know how civic government works, how the court system works, how the police department works. None of this is true. Absolutely none of this is true. And in fact, William Parker appointed a team of detectives to especially handle the big homicide cases. So this is not at all what happened. And again, this murder that Steve is talking about on the wire recording there's no victim. He doesn't know who it is. He doesn't know her name. He doesn't know where the body is. He doesn't know, and he won't tell you that, yeah, half an hour after my dad allegedly killed this woman, he's typing, which is exactly what you have with post-crime behaviors. Well, I think I'll go sit at the typewriter and bat off some letters. No.
Oh, it's gone. We may be able to get him back. We may be able to find him. We may not.
Now, this is also utter bullshit. As public records show that George Hodel remained in the Franklin House, in the Sowden House, into April 1950 when he took the 1950 census. He was even there in August. And how do we know that he was there in August? Well, we know that because alcoholic mom wrote a letter to John Huston asking for, guess what, money, as she often did. And she said Steve and his brothers were there, and it was very tough for them because they were all ostracized by the neighbors because of George Hodel's alleged crimes. So, that's the reality. Not only did George not just, hit the road and take off and they didn't know where he was still there. Steve and his brothers were still living with him in August of 1950, which is 5 months after the surveillance ended. George was still there. And you know what? George was a licensed doctor with the state of California. They kept track of where the doctors were. If they left California, there would be a entry in the California Medical Directory as to where they went and where they were. So this is all, as usual, Steve Hodel bullshit.
If we bring him back, he may get Jerry Geisler and kick our butt again. We may lose it. He knows a lot about all of the corruption.
Yeah, George Hodel knew too much. He knew too much about, I don't know, whatever, but he knew too much.
And the power, the movers and shakers. Maybe it's better, kind of a Machiavellian decision. Maybe we just seal this off for now, lock it away, and come back to it at a future time for the good of the city, for the good of ourselves.
How is letting a murderer get away good for anybody, Steve? It doesn't make sense. What you just said makes zero sense. And I hear a comment from Ed. Is Ed going to challenge him, or is he going to enable him? Let's see.
Maybe they gave him the plane ticket to get out of town.
I don't know. But anyway, that's what happened. I mean, clearly there, he had his friends on the inside. There's no question about that, who were tipping him off. So that's what they did, and they locked this away. And basically, Parker and Thad Brown ordered Lieutenant Jemison and said, return it, give us everything, the original tapes and all of the documents and everything.
That, too, is utter bullshit. What is this? It's the district attorney's files on the Black Dahlia case. Yes, I have them all. I have copies of everything. And no, they weren't given to the LAPD. And no, they weren't given to the LAPD at all. The district attorney was not ordered to turn that over to the LAPD. Nothing like that happened. This is all Steve fantasy. No, no. And Steve is, well, let's see what Steve says.
So Jemison did, but what Jemison did, and he's one of the few that's got a white hat in the story, what he did, unbeknownst to them, was he locked away a second set of books.
Do you hear that weird Steve Hodel laugh that he does?
He copied everything, locked it away, and that's why, otherwise, because LAPD, everything disappeared.
No. What Steve Hodel is saying now is totally untrue. It's total bullshit. Again, let me emphasize, the district attorney's files arose from the Leslie Dillon debacle. The bulk of these files deal with the Dillon investigation and the grand jury inquiry into the Leslie Dillon debacle. There's testimony from everybody on the gangster squad, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot about Leslie Dillon. So no, it was all, and the files are in terrible shape. It's not like Steve is portraying this as this immaculate archival set of files. No, what really happened was the DA was doing a records purge to make room. And somebody said, hey, these look important. Maybe we ought to save them. And so, yeah, so they were shoveled into boxes. And the papers were in no order whatsoever. They were a mess. Steve continues to lie and misrepresent about what's in the district attorney's files and how they were all turned over to the LAPD. And he depends on people's ignorance to not know that. Let me point out, because I have seen the file cabinet in robbery homicide. It is an entire file cabinet devoted to the Black Dahlia case. It is kept under lock and key. And you know what's in there? What's in there is the file on George Hodel that Steve Hodel never, ever, ever asked to see. Yeah. And on we go.
The tapes, the transcripts.
Wire.
Today's LAPD didn't even know George Hodel was a suspect. So we would have never... No.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so sure of that. I mean, today's LAPD wouldn't know, but definitely Harry Hansen knew. For sure.
Owned any of this, and they would have succeeded in the cover-up, what I call a Dahlia Gate, hadn't.
There was no cover-up. The cover-up is shake that moneymaker. Everything Steve Hodel is saying is a lie. It's all a lie. Every word of it.
This Lieutenant Jemison locked away the second set of books for us.
Yeah, you think that would be headline news just in itself.
If it were true, but you know what, Ed? It's utter bullshit. And, I'm not impressed with your ability to interview people, Ed. I have to say that you're not doing it for me here.
Forget about Steve Hodel and his accusations and his investigation. Just the fact that this file was, 86 for all this time, and that happened. We know that happened.
No, you don't know that happened. No, this is utter fantasy.
Yeah, well, and this was all came out, in the follow-ups in the 48 hours thing. It was dealt with, and, but it's still been, it's been hard to. It's kind of complex, and you have to
understand what a remarkable man my dad was.
Read all of the books to get
buy my books. Shake that moneymaker 1. Shake that moneymaker 2. Shake that moneymaker 3. Buy my books. That's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with searching for justice for anybody. It's all about making money. That's it.
Get the full picture, and that's why I wrote the 3-act play recently. I just came out a few months ago with
that. Waiting for somebody to do the play. And no, there isn't a rock opera on George Hodel yet. Not yet, there isn't, unless Steve's writing it in secret. There's not a book of haiku. There's not children's letters to the Black Dahlia Avenger. No, I made all of that stuff up. And there is not Black Dahlia Avenger from Mars. Nah, none of that stuff is true. Okay.
called A Genius for Murder, because that focuses on that 5-year period. And it kind of condenses so you understand exactly what was going on here in LA.
Things were going on.
Time. And, but the kicker is,
oh God, it's Steve Hodel, butthurt again. All right.
Along with that, we've got the top 4 investigators on LAPD and in the county, all independent of each other over the years, admitted that they solved the case. And I'll read you these.
Oh, it's validation from beyond the grave. Conveniently dead people say Steve solved it. It'll be Parker, it will be Thad Brown, it will be Jemison, and it will be some schlub from the sheriff's department.
Direct quotes. We've got Chief Parker telling his personal doctor who contacted me.
Detective Hodel, isn't that hearsay? Isn't that hearsay? A little bit.
Said, we identified the Black Dahlia suspect. He was a doctor. It's not like he was a suspect. You know, we actually identified the Black Dahlia. So that's Parker. And then Thad Brown, chief of detectives, says the Black Dahlia case was solved. He was a doctor who lived on Franklin Avenue in Hollywood. He tells that to Jack Webb, who, you know, Dragnet guy.
Did he really, though? Did he really? How do you know that, Steve? Is it in Jack Webb's The Badge? No, it is not. Did you talk with Jack Webb from Beyond the Grave? Because Jack Webb is taking a dirt nap. Okay.
So you've got that quote. You've got Jefferson. We know who the Black Dahlia killer was. He was a doctor, but we didn't have enough to put him away. Of course, they did have enough to put him.
And where is that from, Steve? It's not in the district attorney's files, because I've got the district attorney's files, and it's not fucking in there. So where'd you get it, unless you pulled it out of your nose? Maybe?
And then the undersheriff, the number 2 man in the sheriff's department.
Ah, yes. The not a sheriff's department case has an opinion.
Tells his chief of detectives, quote, the Black Dahlia case was solved, but it'll never come out. The suspect was a doctor they all knew in Hollywood involved in abortions. So these are all independent of each other and documenting it. So, you know, we've got that. And then that's back then, all original investigators. Then in today's modern days, you know, the chief of detectives, LAPD's, today's LAPD will say, yeah, it's officially unsolved. But the chief of detectives, then chief of detectives, Thad Brown's counterpart, modern day counterpart, reviewed everything.
Oh God, are we going to get an ad? Okay, I'm going to skip 30 seconds here. Nope.
It's the weirdest place.
You get the same.
He just turned himself in back in 1977.
$1 each with card. Ralph's.
Mr. Bush. So, but we got a bunch of people coming on. Cynthia McKinney, the former congresswoman.
I think it was 2004, and chief of detectives James McMurray was present. Heard all of the evidence, and basically came out and ordered his guys at robbery homicide to go ahead and clear the case. Basically, I'll give you a direct quote: unless you find some major holes in Hodel's investigation, go ahead and clear the Black Dahlia case. And that's from the chief of detectives, the top cop there. And
what do you know? They didn't.
Basically, the guys there knew he was retiring in 6-9 months, so they basically kind of didn't do anything. And well, we don't have time right now. He retired, and nothing's been done. And I don't want to get too much into that, but basically, it comes down to egos and territory.
Yeah, it comes down to. Would you like to know what LAPD homicide detective Steve Hodel is full of it? I can tell you, I can give you at least 5 LAPD homicide detectives who say Steve Hodel is full of shit. First of all is Ed Jokish, who worked homicide in the 40s and was very good friends with Jack Donahoe, head of homicide division at the time of the Black Dahlia case. He said Steve Hodel was full of shit. Oh dear. Now, Ed Jokish happens to have died. He was very, as you can imagine, he was very old, but he fought and fought and fought with Steve Hodel over his claims. Ed is gone. Okay, who else said Steve Hodel is full of shit? Well, Danny Galindo, also assigned to the Black Dahlia case at one point. What did he say? Steve Hodel is full of shit. Okay, how about Brian Carr, who was the custodian of the Black Dahlia case in the late 90s? Well, when you talk to Brian, he just laughs about what a nut job Steve Hodel is. That's 3. Have I left out anybody? Yeah. How about, I'm thinking of the former head of the cold case unit. Now, he's a very diplomatic guy. He is never going to say, yeah, Steve Hodel's full of shit. What he will say is, we looked at it and there was nothing to it. If there had been anything to it, we would have cleared the case just to get it off the books. But no, there's nothing to it. Okay, is that 4? Gary Ingmanson, the attorney for the Los Angeles Police Protective League, worked with Ed Jokish to rebut Steve Hodel's claims. He wrote a report saying, in essence, Steve Hodel is full of shit. That's 5 people. Now, Steve won't tell you any of that. He'll say, oh, egos, oh, dear, oh, jurisdictional, blah, blah, blah. No. Steve doesn't have it. There are, and I'm not even getting into the current people. Oh, Sal LaBarbera also says Steve Hodel is full of shit and laughs whenever you bring up Steve Hodel. Okay, what is that? 5 former homicide detectives and the attorney for the Police Protective League, they all laugh and say Steve Hodel's full of shit. Steve won't tell you any of that. I wonder why that would be.
Even though I was a highly respected LAPD. You
were. You trashed your reputation, but you were, I mean, well, Steve's reputation was an okay detective with a drinking problem.
Homicide detective for many years. It's, petty egos and territoriality, and nobody's going to solve it.
And being full of shit and a self-promoting author, maybe.
Our most famous case without even looking at our, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Anyway, that's a whole political thing by itself. But bottom line is, and then in recent years, a whole bunch more physical evidence. I've actually been able to connect the Franklin house, physical evidence from the Franklin house, to the crime scene.
Is this going to be the cement bags? I think we're heading for cement bag territory here. I feel cement bags coming on.
Which is pretty dramatic, and if you like, I'll touch on that for a bit and just lay that out.
Oh, please do.
LAPD knew that the crime hadn't been committed at the vacant lot, that the body had been brought there.
Yeah.
But they didn't know from where. They figured it must have been a private residence because of the extensive, basically the coroner said that the skilled operation is known as a hemicorpectomy.
No, it wasn't known as that. That's more Steve Hodel crap. That procedure didn't exist in 1947. Steve might tell you that it was taught in medical school in the 1930s when Dad went to medical school. But of course it wasn't, except in Steve world, where everything is true.
And it can only be done, you can only divide the body by going through the second and third lumbar vertebrae. They knew it had to have been a skilled surgeon, highly trained,
which George Hodel was not.
It was so neatly done that even the coroner said, I couldn't do as good a job as this surgeon has done.
No, the coroner didn't say that. More Steve Hodel bullshit. Ugh.
So they knew it was a surgeon. They knew it had to be done in a place with running water. The body had been washed clean.
That is true. Running water was required to wash the body, yes.
There's no blood on it. It had been all kinds of torture to it and carefully posed. So they knew it had to a private residence. So
they inferred, they suspected it was a private residence. They didn't know for sure, but that would seem logical. But they didn't know for sure. They have no idea where it was done.
Basically, I discovered that Lloyd Wright, the builder of the home, had been contracted by my dad when he went to China in '45 to do some repairs at the house.
What? But Steve, you lived in the Sowden House constantly until your dad was arrested, but he was in China. So is Ed gonna catch him on that? Nah, Ed's not gonna catch him on that. Ed wants to finish up his hour and a half and go have a beer.
46, and do a lot of work and concrete work and repairs, and while he was gone, and when he came back. So I discovered there was some correspondence between Lloyd Wright and George Hodel at the UCLA Archives, Special Collections.
Yeah, there's the Lloyd Wright Archive at UCLA. That is true. There is correspondence with George Hodel regarding work that he wanted done on the Sowden House. That is actually true. That is actually accurate.
Go there, get the Hodel Wright file, open it up, and here I discover that there are some original receipts. There's letters from my dad to Lloyd Wright, instructions and stuff. But there's actually original receipts, and they list 10 bags of 50-pound bags of cement that were billed in the receipts that were.
Oh my God. Bags of cement. Imagine that. Can you imagine? George Hodel was the only person in a city of millions to buy bags of cement. Oh my God. The smoking gun.
Used at the Franklin House. But the kicker is they're dated January 10th, 1947. So they were there and they finished the work there during the.
What's dated? The receipts or the bags? Let's listen to that again, shall we?
That were used at the Franklin House. But the kicker is they're dated January 10th, bags of cement that were billed. But there's actually original receipts, and they list 10 bags of 50-pound bags of cement that were billed in the receipts that were used at the Franklin House. But the kicker is they're dated January 10th, 1947. So they were there and they finished the work there during this so-called missing week, just days before the body was found. So we've got these empty 50-pound cement bags at the Franklin House then. Well, we also know that
maybe they just went into the trash, Steve. Did that ever occur to you? Is there any reason to believe that they didn't go into the trash? That the contractors didn't clean up the job site?
50-pound cement bags were used to transport.
Hear that laugh? Another weird Steve Hodel laugh.
The body from the residence to the crime scene. In other words, not placed inside, but the body was placed on top of these heavy paper bags and transported to the scene, lifted out of the car, probably protecting the seats, lifted out, carried and posed. And the cement bags, empty bags, were left right near the body. And you've got the crime scene photographs showing the.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about the cement bags. When you read the original news stories about the Black Dahlia crime scene, you will see references to cement bags. Yes, that's what was reported in the paper. Were they really cement bags? I'm not going to say any more about that. That's what was in the newspaper.
Cement bags laying right next to the body, and got the coroner's testimony that they were used in transporting the body.
I don't believe that's in the coroner's file either, Steve. I think that's more fantasy land.
So this is, I don't have the serial numbers on the cement bags, but we've got
that laugh. No, they don't put serial numbers on cement bags.
Them 3 days before the body's found at the Franklin House, and then we've got them at the crime scene right next to the body and used in transporting. So that.
Yeah, and again, imagine after World War II, post-war housing construction, George Hodel is the only person buying cement. Hello, I'd like some cement bags, please. Sorry, George Hodel has bought every one. No more cement. No cement for you. Nope, sorry. Come back later. How do people fall for this stuff? How?
Was pretty dramatic evidence by itself. And then the other thing that happened has to do with last year.
Oh, God. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Steve Hodel butthurt again.
I was contacted by the Ghost Hunters, which is a fairly popular paranormal show.
Okay.
And they said,
oh, here comes Buster the Cadaver Dog. I'm starting to think that this tape must be from 2014 because the Ghost Hunters show and Buster the Cadaver Dog, that was a while ago. That wasn't recent.
So we want to, we're going to, I guess, ghost hunt the house, the Franklin house. And we were wondering if you wanted to be involved and give us some history and stuff on the house and stuff. The producer called me and I said, thank you, but I'm going to pass. I said, I try to keep an open mind, but I said,
Steve Hodel, man of the open mind. Maybe that's why so much wind blows through it.
As far as the paranormal stuff, I said, I'm not really into things that go bump in the night. I'm not saying it.
Unless it's Evil Daddy, then he's into it.
It doesn't exist, but I want to keep my investigation objective and
yeah, because one thing Steve is known for is his objectivity. Yeah,
scientific, and I said I don't want to. I've had
Steve Hodel, man of science.
Astrologers and psychics and stuff. It's been my experience in my years of investigation that most of them are phonies and charlatans. And
oh, do tell me about phonies and charlatans, please, Steve. I can't get enough of it.
I'm not saying they all are, but I just want to keep it clean. I said thanks, but I'll pass. And she said, well, we consider ourselves objective too. She says, in fact, we're getting a cadaver dog.
Buster, the three-legged cadaver dog. Rest in peace, Buster. R.I.P. Roof, roof.
And a retired police sergeant to come down and check it out, the house. I said, you are? I said, wait a minute, that's a whole different ballgame. I said, that's...
I'm in, baby. I'm in.
Genuine, real forensics.
Yeah, let's talk about police dogs, shall we? Now, cadaver dogs, if they are like dogs that are trained to sniff out, drugs and explosives and stuff like that, they take constant work. You have to constantly keep working with them to keep their skills sharp. Otherwise, they forget that stuff. And so Paul Dostie is, I'm sure he's a nice fellow, but whether Buster was really up to snuff on sniffing out body parts, I'm not sure. I would think that having a leg amputated, sorry, Buster, but I would think that he would need to retire to his, I don't know, his doggy bed or something, rather than continuing to try to work. Very skeptical. I have more to say about this, probably.
I said, well, count me in. I said, if you'll allow me to work, to do a separate investigation, and you can follow around on the camera, and we, do that, I said, then I'm in. I said, deal. So basically, in November last year, I met with this Sergeant Paul Dostie, and he's got a black Labrador named
Buster the cadaver dog.
Buster. And I met them in front of the house with the film crew, and the current owner gave permission to to access the basement and or wherever inside the house. So I met him for the first time, and I met Buster, and we're down at the street level, and the house goes up. There's stairs up to it. We're actually below the basement level on the street.
Buster alerted in several locations.
And Sergeant Dosty says, well, you know, are there any vents that go to the basement? I said, yeah, there are. And he says, well, let's start out here. And he says, I'm going to give Buster the command to search. Now, this is a cadaver dog that's trained to alert only for human remains, not for dead rats, nothing else.
Again, with a dog like this, you've got to keep working with them all the time to keep their skills sharp. Otherwise, it's like anything else, it fades. Which I'm not sure Dosty was doing with Buster.
He's one of the top in the world. He is, you know, his bona fides are amazing. He's been overseas in the islands and the atolls and found human remains of missing soldiers.
Yeah, well, I do believe that Paul Dosty and Buster were involved with a unfortunate search for Manson family victims where they found absolutely not a fucking thing. Isn't that right, Detective Hodel?
And just during World War II, it's just an incredible record. Anyway, we're out there, and he gives him the command. Buster takes off and goes to the southwest corner of the house, and he alerts. We're right at a vent, which is right at the basement. I'm kind of blown away, and I thought, wow. So we go inside, into the basement, and he alerts at 4 different areas inside the basement.
Maybe he just needed to pee. You think?
And we would collect soil samples for analysis from that. And
so the basement isn't cemented over, it's dirt down there, is that right? Is that right, Steve, that there's dirt down in the basement? It doesn't sound like the surgical suite that one would expect from the evil genius doctor down in the basement.
Of course, based on what LAPD and the DAs knew, we knew that, you know, there had been an assault and possibly buried bodies in the basement, or if nothing else.
Basement has a dirt floor?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that basement, Ed, that basement is full of bodies everywhere. Every time the plumber, you know, sticks a shovel in the ground, oh hell, it's another body. Gee whiz.
All dirt, all soil. And it was basically exactly as it was from back in the 40s. I mean, part of the place had been refinished, but the area that he alerted on was all original soil as it was. So we collect the soil samples, and then we do a perimeter search, and Buster alerts to the back in the alley. There's an uphill thing, and he alerts at the base of this uphill slope, which was our back then open in our backyard. And he recovers soil samples from back there. So basically, I'm kind of blown away and amazed by this because, you know, during my years, we did.
Yeah, we're back on the air. Okay,
what just happened?
Let's go. I'm sorry about that, Steve. I lost my internet connection, but we're back.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we sent the soil analysis, the soil samples in for analysis, and there was a snafu situation. We kept getting delays and.
Yeah. Okay. Time. Excuse me. Time for a reality check. You know the TV show that Steve was supposedly working with? They cut that footage. They didn't use 1 foot of it, not 1 minute of Steve Hodel and Buster. Didn't use it at all. And so that footage was just sort of floating around. And yeah. The soil samples were sent off to this goofball scientist who sat on everything for a year, 2 years, a long time. Dosty actually said on the radio, I don't think we're ever going to get the results from that test. And what the researcher, the analyst said was, Oh yeah, human remains sometime in the last century. Okay, sometime in the last century. That's what really happened. Let's see how Steve tells that story. Detective Hodel, proceed.
So after about 6 months or 9 months, we said, "The heck of it, let's go back and get some more." So we went back with this Dr. Arpad Voss, who was one of the
Yeah, this nut job. Pardon me, this respected scientist. Another nut job. These nut job conspiracy folks all find each other. Okay.
leading authorities on cadavers in the world. He's a top-notch
Universally mocked.
Forensic anthropologist.
Yeah, I've heard that name before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was the star witness on the Casey Anthony case.
Okay, sure. Okay, yeah.
And also he works at the Body Farm.
Okay.
And huge CV. Anyway, collect new samples from the rear area and stuff, and those are analyzed, and they've just come back. And I just released this information last week, and they're
Okay, this is an old podcast. This is an old interview. Then I'm pretty sure that the current owners of the house told Steve, "No, you can't come back inside again. No, you can't go down in the basement again." I think that's what happened, because Steve kind of grumps about it, as he is known to do.
Report is amazing. It's specific. It's human specific. Okay, the analysis says that it's definitely human specific, and that, in his opinion, a body or bodies are or were buried near the in or near the property, probably in excess of 40 years ago. Now, I guess they break that down by whatever.
I think the correct line is in the last 100 years, I think, is how that worked.
Chemicals are present, in the breakdown. So what we've got now is this, leading world authority.
Yeah, he ain't. He is a notorious scam artist. Google him, and you will find out now this guy's a con artist, like all the people who associate themselves with Steve Hodel. Another con artist.
Saying, it's specific for human specific.
Specific for humans, human specific for humans, specific for humans. Specific. Yeah, got it.
And what he's doing is corroborating Buster, and Buster's corroborating what LAPD believed, that there were bodies buried in or on the premises.
What? No. There is a shred of evidence to show that the LAPD believed that there were bodies buried at the Sowden House. No. That is, oh my God. No, that's total Stevie Hodel lunacy. No. And if the LAPD really thought that there were bodies buried there, they would dig that property up, let me tell you. The Bobcats would roll.
Yeah, plus there's audio recordings.
Yeah, well, of the assault, yeah.
Yeah, so then...
What, the alleged assault, which I don't know her name, and we never found the body, and a half an hour later, Dad is typing, and, it's like, okay, in reality, Steve needs this to be a killing, and he's not going to worry about details like who is the victim and what happened to her, and didn't anybody report her missing or anything like that. Now, it's just I need to kill off somebody for the purposes of my bogus narrative.
Well, are they going to dig up the basement or what?
No, so I present this to I present Dr. Arpad's report to LAPD. Current assigned investigators. That's about 4 months ago. They've done nothing. I don't expect they will do anything.
No, they're not going to do anything. You know why? You know why they're not going to do anything? Because as far as they're concerned, you are just a self-promoting con man. They've got your number, Steve. It's that simple. It's not egos. It's not jurisdictional. They see you as a self-promoting con man. And they're not going to give you the time of day. That's true.
Basically, their position is, now they can't refute my evidence, you know.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can.
And so all they can do is say, we don't have time to investigate this. We're working on current cases. And basically, that's their position. They say, we just can't, we don't have the time to invest in this.
We don't have time to support some bullshit con man's claim so he can write another book about how corrupt the LAPD is. So no, the LAPD smartly is not going to enable Steve Hodel, unlike everybody else. Yeah, good move. They've got your number. The LAPD has your number, Steve. They know they are on to you. They got your number, babe.
Well, you know, I don't think that's going to change. I think LAPD and there's a whole bunch of reasons it's political and you know, I think they're concerned about if they come out and confirm that I'm right, you know, then they're saying that they're two greatest heroes.
No, that's not what's happening at all. They know you're full of it, Steve. Everybody who knows anything about the Black Dahlia case, except for listening to you, knows you're full of it. They know you're a self-promoting con man. They got your number. That's it. Now, they're on to you. They know the deal. No.
My two greatest heroes, Parker and Thad Brown, you know, maybe were involved in this, and maybe that's throwing some mud on their badges. You know, I don't know, but go figure.
You know what? Nobody knows who Thad Brown is today. Nobody. He's forgotten, except by really, really, really old people who might have worked with him. But the LAPD today, they don't know who he is. They don't even know who Parker is. You know, come on. They don't know who Willie Williams is. I'll bet they don't know who Daryl Gates is or Tom Redden. They don't know. It's forgotten. It's all forgotten.
Anyway, it's amazing that this soil analysis is actually confirming that. Now the kicker is that.
Is there a kicker to the kicker?
Dr. Arpad Voss and
the guy is super con man. You read, Google that guy. Google the guy. See what they say about him. Go ahead. Find out what a respected authority he is. Yeah, no.
Dosty believe, rather than in the basement, they think there's more likelihood that the body or bodies are buried on a level area up from the back of behind the house. Now, when I was living there as a kid, that was our backyard playground. You went up the slope and it leveled off. So it's actually on.
You know what's interesting? I'll tell you what's interesting. I was just reading a letter from alcoholic drunk Dorothy to John Huston about how she couldn't let Steve and his brothers go outside and play because the neighbors hated anybody associated with the house because of Tamar's allegations against George. So I'm not sure Steve was doing a lot of playing outside of the house, at least according to drunk Dorothy. She wrote to John Huston, can't let the kids outside. Yeah. Do go on, Detective Hodel.
Somebody else's property now. It was you know, back then it was all open field. But so I contacted the owner of the property. I did my research and found out that it's actually owned by a fairly well-known actress by the name of Laura Prepon.
Oh, Laura, of course.
And she is, I think, Orange is the New Black television series.
Really?
She's an actress
in
that. She's also an actress in the 70s something. I'm not up on television, but anyway.
Except Who is the Black Dahlia? You saw that one, Steve.
She's a very attractive young actress. So I contacted her and then contacted her attorney, actually, and said, look, here's the story. And I kind of laid it out to him. I said, we would like...
Another weird Steve Hodel laugh. We got 9 minutes left. Hang on, we're going to make it.
Have permission to go and just take Buster up there and let him rule it in or rule it out, because the doctor feels that this area up here in your backyard is very likely could be a burial site. And he said, well, let me get back to you in a week. And true to his word, he got back and said, I've run it by her and we're going to pass. We're not going to give you permission to take the dog up there. And I said, well, it's not invasive. It's not like we've got to go digging or anything. We just want to have him.
We just want to have the cadaver dog run around and frolic in your yard. Wouldn't that be okay?
Put his nose to the ground. Anyway, they said no. And so that's kind of where we're at now. Sadly, I'd like to rule it in or rule it out, but
Steve Hodel and his continuing pursuit of the truth. Yeah.
LAPD is not, for a whole bunch of reasons, hasn't decided not to take any action. So, and I think the attorney probably looked at it and said, well, hell, if LAPD isn't going to move on it, why should we? In a way you can, his job is to protect her privacy and stuff. So in a way you can kind of understand it, but it's frustrating. So that was huge confirmation, and like I say,
yeah, this three-legged dog goes, and years afterwards, this crackpot doctor or scientist says, oh yeah, something was there within the last, I really do believe he said, if I remember correctly, it was in the last century. I mean, it's like, really, dude, come on.
It's all come together now, and we've only really touched on, I don't want to say we've gone into more depth than that, but there's so many more, there's a lot more to it. We haven't even talked about the murder as a fine art,
Oh, I'm so sorry. We didn't get into the surrealists yet. Oh dear. No time for Man Ray. No time for Copley. So sad. You've got 8 minutes, Stephen. You just throw it in a little bit.
The why of the crimes, and that was Dad's personal madness, was this. It's all tied into surrealism, and it's very expensive. It explains all of that. And we haven't got time to get into that. Maybe if you like, I can, because we've only got about 8 more minutes.
Have him back, Ed. Bring him back a second time so you can talk about surrealism. If you really want to be numbed into sleep, that'll do it.
Right?
Yeah. Not even that. We get 6
minutes.
minutes.
6 minutes. So maybe we haven't discussed Zodiac. Now, in Most Evil, that looks at...
Oh. Shake that moneymaker. Shake that moneymaker. Let me point out, and I never get tired of pointing this out, the Zodiac. You think I'm hard on Steve Hodel? You think I'm harsh? You think I'm mean? You should read what the Zodiac people have to say about Steve Hodel. They are brutal. I'm Mr. Nice Guy compared to them. They are brutal to Steve Hodel and what a lying bullshit artist he is. Yeah, they really are. Yeah.
Crimes that Dad did outside of LA, and it deals with the lipstick murders in Chicago in the mid-40s, which I believe he did.
Yes, well, Steve believes he did it, therefore he did it. That's how Steve works. I believe he did it, boom. It's true.
No, but wasn't it in Chicago, though, those lipstick murders?
Yeah, in Chicago. And another guy was, a teenager was arrested and convicted and served 64 years and just died in prison. His name was Bill Hirons. But it was a false confession.
Nah, it wasn't a false confession. Nope. Oh, is Steve going to say that he didn't get a trial? Let's see. Steve usually says that. So let's see.
And clearly, I mean, I did all my homework. A number of books have been written about him. He did not do that murder.
But now, a lot of wrong. Your dad was in Chicago at that time, though?
Well,
Ed? Ed, let me caution you against asking pertinent questions of Detective 3 Hodel. Let's hear what Steve has to say.
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. I can't, because the records don't exist, I can't establish him there exactly at that time. But
did you hear what he said? I cannot establish that he was there at that time. Let me play it back for you. Let me run it back and play it again so you can hear it.
Wrong.
Your dad was in Chicago at that time, though?
Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. I can't, because the records don't exist, I can't establish him there exactly at that time. But
yeah, kind of crucial, isn't it, Steve? Ed, you may redeem yourself yet. Do you have any proof that your dad was in Chicago at the time? Well, no, I can't. But so is Steve going to get into thought prints or clues, or I recognized his MO? Let's see. Okay, bring it, Ed.
There's a whole bunch of reasons why what happened. One of the victims,
Talk your way around that one, Stevie.
a little girl was kidnapped, and she was surgically bisected, and it was the same.
Yeah, I don't know if she was bisected. Steve says that, but I'm not convinced of that. There's really not a lot to support that.
Operation, a hemicorpectomy.
Doesn't exist. That procedure did not exist in the 40s. It came about much later. No.
She was surgically divided between the second and third lumbar vertebrae.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if Steve has seen the medical examiner's report on Suzanne Degnan. I don't think it has ever been released to the public. I wouldn't want to see it if it was. But I'm very skeptical given Steve's pattern and practice of lying about everything. I don't believe it. We do know that Suzanne Degnan was dismembered, but whether she was cut in half, that is pretty specious.
Skilled surgeon, the coroner in Chicago said, "This guy is better than me." He had
no. That is not at all what the medical examiner said about the death of Suzanne Degnan. Some of the dismemberment was fairly well done. Other parts of it were very, very crude. And let me point out that William Hirons was a hunter. He knew how to dress game. He knew how to dress deer. And he was into taxidermy. So he had some idea of how to cut up bodies, okay? And Steve Hodel isn't going to tell you any of that. He doesn't want you to know. He wants you to think, oh, William Hirons was this poor teenager. Yeah. Nah.
It had to have been a surgeon.
No, did not say that at all. Absolutely the opposite of that. Some parts of it were well done. Other parts of it were very crude, according to the original news accounts.
Kid clearly wasn't a surgeon, but there are a whole bunch of reasons why the point to George as being the killer. And incredibly, I would have never even gone there. But what I found out, what started me off on the second book, which is Most Evil.
Most Evil. Black Dahlia Avenger. Shake that money maker.
Was the fact that Elizabeth Short. Now, this is in the DA.
Okay, here we go. This is map torture. Now, Steve is going to say some version of Elizabeth Short's body was left off Degnan, or as a pointer to Degnan. Let me point out emphatically that Steve stole this idea, as absolutely stupid as it is. He stole it from this crackpot website, which was, and I try not to give out the URL because it's so demented, but this guy was into deriving names and whatnot from the crackpot mail. Does that sound familiar? He would recognize patterns and whatnot. and I am not going to give the link to it, but one of the things was, Elizabeth Short's body on Norton was a pointer to Degnan, several blocks away, as an indicator of a relationship to the murder of Suzanne Degnan, this little girl in Chicago. Horrible murder the year before. Let's see how Steve handles that.
Files. She goes back to, well, she's 6 months before she's murdered. She goes back to.
Oh, no.
Which is most evil, was the fact that Elizabeth Short. Now, this is in the DA files.
Okay, this is not in the DA's files. This is utter bullshit.
She goes back to, well, she's 6 months before she's murdered. She goes back to Chicago.
No, she didn't go back to Chicago from LA because she wasn't in LA. What really happened in the real world is that Elizabeth Short left Medford. She stopped in Indianapolis. She stopped in Chicago, and she cannonballed out to Los Angeles. She did not go back to Chicago. That didn't happen. No, and it's not in the district attorney's files. It's not anywhere except in the mind of Steve Hodel. Okay.
She starts investigating the lipstick murders. She actually sleeps with a few of the reporters to get information.
None of this is true. This is all fantasy. Not a word of what Steve Hodel's saying is true. Nothing.
Wait, who did? Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Short isn't.
Ed, you're interrupting Detective 3 Hodel again. Oh dear. Are you challenging him?
Investigating the murders back then in 1946.
Really?
Yeah, really. That's what turned me on to it. I said, why is she doing this? Well, clearly
she didn't do it, Steve. That's the real answer is she didn't do that, and you're full of shit, is the real answer.
Must have got some kind of clue or hint that could have been related because to those crimes, because why else go back and start investigating him while he's up, he's in China?
Because she didn't, that's why.
Starts doing that. He comes back unexpectedly from China. She starts running, fear of her life. And the next thing we know, a few months later, she's dead.
What? Okay. In reality, George Hodel is in China. It's right after World War II. And let me point out that there is no fast way to get back to the U.S. from China. He's on a boat. It takes a long time. She isn't on the run from anybody either. There is about a 2-month window from when George Hodel got back to California from China and Elizabeth Short went down to San Diego. It's about a 2-month period, and that's the only time they really overlapped in LA. And so this is just goofy. This is just Steve Hodel goofiness.
But the kicker is this.
Oh, please, let's have another kicker. I can't get enough kickers.
Her body is posed, I don't know in time, but basically her body is posed, the killer knew where he was going. He went down and he was coming up a street called Degnan, Degnan.
A name I've never heard before.
And it goes off to the right, and if you stay to the right, you're on Degnan. If you go to the left, you're on Norton. It's a coin toss, Well, he went to the left, thinking he was on Degnan, poses the body, and then goes home.
Now, Steve, dear, let me note again that you stole that idea and that making a mistake like that, going on Norton instead of Degnan, for a brilliant genius man like your dad with 186 IQ, 1 point higher than Einstein, he suddenly doesn't know which street he's on? Really? How do people fall for this stuff? Oh yeah, my dad was a super genius, but he was on the wrong street. Oops. Okay.
Okay, so the name of the victim, this little girl that was killed in Chicago, take a guess.
Degnan, I know.
You got it, Degnan.
Yeah.
So this is a part of his taunt. Okay, you're going to expose me and reveal that I'm the killer of Suzanne Degnan. So he posed her body on what he thought was Degnan.
He didn't think that. Nobody thinks that. You know, if you drive down in that neighborhood, it's impossible to make that mistake. As I said, as stupid as this idea is, Steve Hodel stole it. He is shameless. He is shameless at stealing stuff.
And that took me to
4 minutes.
a Manila murder.
4 minutes.
It's a surgical murder, body posed, nude in the 60s, and the killer 8 blocks from where Dad's living.
Yeah, Steve is going to say the street was named Zodiac and Dad lived close by. And it's like, you know, you look at a map of Manila and it is a lot farther than that. This is Steve wishful thinking. And again, he's relying on people. Nobody's going to go to a map of Manila. Nobody's going to have George Hodel's address. Nobody's going to say, hey, wait a minute, Steve, it's a lot farther than you say. No, nobody's going to do that but me. I do that. I do that.
It was a surgical murder just like the others, and he poses it on a street called Zodiac.
Oh my God.
Another laugh. Another weird little laugh. Boy, Steve is full of the weird little laughs today.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, I'm not.
Ed, you disappoint me. You disappoint me, man. Not ready for prime time, Ed. Sorry. Check your skepticism at the door.
I'm kidding you. And I said, oh, no, this can't be. So basically, and I lay it all out in Most Evil, I lay out how.
Shake that moneymaker. Buy my books. Shake that moneymaker. Buy my books. Oh, buy them, buy them. Okay, we got 4 minutes left of this. Can we make it?
It all comes together. And I'm not saying my father was Zodiac. I'm saying, you know, they need to do DNA.
Yes, you are. That sure as hell is what you're saying. Now, I'm not saying my dad is Zodiac, but my dad is Zodiac.
And check this out, because he needs to go to the top of the list because of a whole bunch of reasons.
A whole bunch of reasons, including it'll help me sell books. You got to do that.
You know, they all fit together. And it's like, you know, this can't be another huge rabbit hole I'm going into here. But the voice is the same, the taunting notes are the same, the handwriting.
The taunting notes from Zodiac are just like the other notes. Wow. Have you seen the Zodiac notes? They're nothing at all like the crackpot mail from the Black Dahlia case. Not in the least. Not in the least. 3 minutes.
Department of Justice, California Department of Justice looked at the handwriting. They can't eliminate George Hodel.
The California Department of Justice. The hell is that? Yeah.
Being the author as being Zodiac, you know, and they need more of this lowercase writing, which I don't have.
Darn. I have some of your dad's writing samples, Steve. It looks nothing at all like the Black Dahlia Avenger letter. I haven't. If you know where to look, you'd have it too. Maybe you don't really want to find it. Could be. Could that be?
But I'm just saying, you know,
I'm just saying he could be Zodiac, but he's not. But I'm not saying that. But he could be.
Need to do DNA on that. I make a compelling case. I don't say case solved.
Unlike the other BS I've been throwing around.
Dahlia case, which is definitely solved. There's no question.
No, it isn't. It is definitely not solved. It is as far from being solved by Steve Hodel as it was in 2003. He is not 1 inch closer to it because it's all crap. All Steve Hodel has done is pile up a huge mountain of bogus garbage over the last 20 years. And that's all.
About that. But Zodiac, and it's just, an incredible story all linked together. He basically
we gotta have you
reinvented
back.
it.
We gotta have you back and get into more details. Oh, real quick. How can people get a hold of you? What's the best?
BuyMyBooks.com.
That's the way you'd like to get a hold of you.
My best is emailing steve@stevehodel.com.
Okay, great. SteveHodel.com.
BuyMyBooks.com.
Steve@stevehodel.com.
Right. Okay, Steve, thank you very much, man. Okay, this is a great show. You got a ton of information. Hopefully we can have you back maybe in a month or so, and then we'll get into the rest of this. This is incredible stuff.
Yeah, have him back.
Okay,
guys.
you take care. Glad to be with you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much. All right, guys. Good night. We'll see you next week. We got
Well, I wasn't sure I was going to make it through an hour and a half of Steve Hodel podcast. Made it. A lot of the same old stuff, a little bit new, a lot of softball questions from Ed Opperman. Every once in a while, Ed would actually say, hey, what about this? But generally, have Steve on, sell his books, softball questions, friendly host. And that is pretty much the only kind of interviews that Steve Hodel does. Not a lot of revelations per se. Again, it sounds like this interview was a while ago because he had just written the play and that kind of thing. So I don't have a lot more to add, except as always, if you get to the end of this, you get a gold star, and don't blame me for it being so long. Blame Steve Hodel for lying so much. And with that, Larry Harnisch is out of here.